Okay, Valti. Zok the head of the Gemara. I think we should go back just a little bit to the two dots. We were learning about how a tree, although its roots spread 25 amas in each direction, it only really nourishes and absorbs from the karka up to 16 amma radius. Today we're going to learn some geometrical formulas that bring us out of the ice age in math. So therefore, we'll be able to make calculations that the Gemara makes in a much simpler fashion than the Gemara, who didn't have this formula. Amar Ula, Ilan Asamach L'Meitzar. If someone has an Ilan that's near the border of someone else's field, B'soich Eshesh Esrayama, Gazlan, we consider him a Gazlan. And Rashi says the reason why we consider him a Gazlan is Sheyoinek Mistei Chavera. He is stealing nourishment from the field of his friend. Lamaskona, our Gemara is not going to agree with Ula. But this is what Ula says. Gazlanu, and therefore the Ein Meviin Mimenu Bikurim. You cannot bring Bikurim from this property. Zogt Rashi. Ein Tzarech Lahavi Mimenu Bikurim. It doesn't mean that it's usher. It means that you don't have to. The pears that you bring from your land. But these pears aren't from your land. These pears were nourished from your neighbor's land. Where did Ula get his halacha from? Ilema miditna. Eser netiyos hamefuzaris b'soich beisa chorshin kol beisa b'shvilon ad Rosh Hashanah. The halacha is normally you're not allowed to plow even before the Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah, because it's in preparation to do things on Shemitah. However, if you have existing saplings that are going to be injured if they're not maintained, then you're allowed to do these activities up until Rosh Hashanah. Now it says, if you have a Beisa, which Rashi tells us is 50 amas by 50 amas, and there's only 10 saplings in it that are equally spread out in the field, which would be the appropriate amount of space to leave for each tree, then because of that, Charshin Kol Beisa B'Shvilam Ad Rosh Hashanah. You'd be allowed to plow, and that's to aerate the soil, the entire Beisa. So what we see from here is the right concentration of saplings into a piece of property is to take a 50 amma by 50 amma property and evenly spread out 10 saplings in it. So, let's do a simple mathematical calculation to figure out how much space is the appropriate amount of space to allow per plant. Kama havaluhu, trei alfin v'chamesh me'es karmidi. We know that a beisa is 50 by 50. 50 times 50 is 2,500. So in total, we have 2,500 square amas. How much area does each tree use? It's simple. 2,500 divided by 10. That means each tree gets 250 square amas. Well, let's think about that. That would be much less than the amount that Ula is allowing. Because let's use a simple, I'm not going to use Rashi's calculations, I'm going to use pi. So pi r squared, the radius is 16. So let me get my calculator, and then we put it all together. So the radius is 16 according to a Shlokish. So let's look at 16 squared. (16) times 16 is 256 times pi times 3.1415, and that's 804 amas. So what Ula is giving, Ula is saying each tree needs way more space. Ula is saying each tree needs way more space than the trees that the Brisa tells us are required. So let's just think about this for a moment. Is Ula giving a chumrah or is Ula giving a kula? Ula is saying that this is considered stolen and therefore you don't have to take bikurim from it. Not having to take bikurim, the pashas at first glance would be a kula. So by Ula saying that instead of a tree requiring 804 amas, instead of a tree requiring 250 amas, it needs 804 square amas. In doing so, it's being very makel, because it's saying that even up to a radius of 804 or a radius of 16, you're still not going to have to bring bikur. So let's have a look at this. So Ula's source cannot be this, because this only gives him 250 per tree, when Ula is allowing 804 per tree. The Elamiditnan, maybe Ula's source is a different issue. Shloisha Ilanois, Shal Gimel, B'nei Adam, Hara'elim Mitztarfin, V'charshin, Kol Beis Shah B'Shvila. Up until now, we were talking about the Tiyoi, saplings. Saplings, you can put 10 in the Beis Shah. But if you have fully grown trees, there 3 trees would fill the entire Beis Shah. And the Mishnah tells us, if there are 3 trees, even if they didn't all belong to the same person, that doesn't change how much space each tree needs. And if there's even 3 trees in the Beis Shah, once again, mitzdarpin going on to Amud Aleph, and you could be chosh to whole Beis Shah. So let's figure out, if there's only 3 trees, what is the area? Again, we started off with 2,500 square amas, and now instead of dividing 2,500 by 10, we're going to divide it by 3. 2,500 divided by 3 is 833 and a third. So, Nachmo, Kama Havaluhu, how much is it per tree? Let's do the calculations. Tre'alfe the Hey Mea Garmidi, it's a total of 2,500 square amas. L'chol chad kama motovay. So if you divide that by 3, what is it per item, per tree? Thank you so much. Hamni Mea utloson utlosa v'tos. It works out to 833 and a third square amas per tree. So let's think about it. Ula said anything more than 804 amas, anything, if your tree takes up to 804, that's called it's going to be nourishing from 804 square amas. The Mishnah here, based on what we're extracting, is saying a tree will nourish 833 amas. So 33 minus 4 is about 29. It's not about exactly 29, but it's not an exact number. So what the Gemara is doing here is Ula said that a tree takes nourishment from 16 amas around it, and therefore, if you're within 16 amas of your friend's property, your tree sort of stole nourishment from the next door property. If your tree stole nourishment from the next door property, then you can't call it that a grew me'artzach. And in order to take off bikurim, you have to say the Torah of bikurim, the parsha of bikurim, which says asher tovi me'artzach. So you can't say that because this tree technically didn't grow me'artzach, it nourished from your neighbor's property, therefore you wouldn't bring bikurim. Ula is saying akula. You don't have to bring bikurim if your tree infringed on somebody else's property. So the Gemara is looking, where did Ula get this radius of 16? So the first thing we have to understand is what is the area? What is the area of 16? What is the area of 16? So actually, he started using the formula of pi. I should not have used the formula of pi because that's assuming that Ula's radius is a round radius. Maybe Ula is talking about a square. So if it's a square, based on the 16 radius, it's like 32 by 32, right? Right? Does that make sense? 32 by 32? It's the distance of 16 in every direction, but it's a square. So 32 times 32 is actually 1024. It's 1,024 square amas per tree is what he's allowing. The Gemara brings a raya from a halacha that says that you're not supposed to plow fields in preparation of the Shemitah year, unless there's trees there and the trees needed for their safety to keep them healthy. So if there were 3 trees in a field that was 50 amos by 50 amos, you could plow the whole field for it. So the Gemara tells us, so let's figure out how many square amos the Mishnah here is saying we need per tree. If there's 2,500 square amos in this base saw, and we're dividing it by 3 because there are 3 trees, that works out to each tree requiring 833 and a third square amos. But Ula said each tree needs 1,024 square amos. So Ula is saying that a bigger area is going to kata you from Bikurim. So Zok the Gemara, Akata Nefishale. Ula is giving too much space. Because Ula is saying if it's even within 16 amos, which gives you a 1024 radius, 1024 area. If it's within 16 amos, which is an area of 1024, even there, you don't bring Bikurim. While from the Mishnah you only see if it's 833 square amos, which would be less than that 16 radius, only that will be parted from Bikurim. So Ula wasn't being accurate. You know when you could say Ula wasn't being accurate? L'chumr. If he wasn't dark, and the number that he gave would be a chumr. But here he's saying if it's 16 amos, if it's within 16 amos, you're part of Bikurim. That's not quite true. It's more like 15 and a half amos. So you can't be loidak l'kula because someone is going to take what you said and paskin like it. You could be loidak l'chumra. You could say even 14 amos, you don't bring Bikurim. And it says loidak really means a little more. But to say that it's mutter even more of loidak, you can't do that. Zok Gemara, misavis beriva kamrin. Up until now, we were working with a 32 by 32 square, which netted 1024 amos. But that's not the case. It's Bikula Kamrin. We're going to go with Igula. Now, Gemara didn't use the pi formula. And therefore, it makes a much more drawn out, detailed calculation of how to get from squared around. But I want to use pi, and we're going to get accurate numbers. So let's use pi to know the area of a circle with a 16 amma radius. So the formula is pi r squared. So the law in math is exponents are processed first. So first you do the r squared, which would be 16 times 16 is 256, times pi is 3.1415. So 256 times 3.1415 is 804, 224. So now we're a little closer. Ula is saying 804 square amos, you won't, if it's more than that, you don't have to bring Bikurim. However, the Mishnah says 833. So here Ula is loidak, but he's giving you less space, not more. Because the Mishnah is 833. Because the Mishnah says 3 into 2,500. And Ula says 804, so that's much better. When Ula said 16 amos, he didn't mean a 32 amos square. Bigula kamrina. He meant a 16 amma radius. So the circle inscribed in a square is a lot less area than the square itself. Michti. Kama maruba yosy. You know how much more space there would be in the square that was drawn around the circle, more than the circle, revia. It's a quarter. Now, it's not mamish a quarter, because let's look at it. We said 32 by 32, which is the square, was 1024, right? Pi, the area of the circle, that's 16 radius, 804. So 804 to 1024 is it's a quarter of 800 is 200. So it's almost there. So the Gemara is using numbers that are pretty accurate, right? So Kama Maruba, it's approximately accurate. The Kama Maruba Yoser ala Igel Revia. So therefore, Hoshula Zayin Meya Vishitin Utamanya. So let's have a look. if you have 1024, right? Because 1024 was the number that we were working with. 1024 is the number that we were working with. I'm sorry, 1024 is the number to work with Rav, because it was 32 by 32 is 1024. So that was a square number we were working on with Rav. If you take 25% away from it, Hashula Zayin Meya 768. So 1024, if I subtract from it, I'm going to divide it by 4 and I'm multiply it by 3, I get 768, right? So I have Pashla Zayin Meya V'shit L'tam is 768. So Zok to Gemara, Akati Posh Lei Halgad Amsa. If the shear that Ula is giving is 768, it's not really 768. Using pi, I already said it's 803, but 768 is close enough. 768 is less than 833. So 766 is less than 833. It's missing a half an amma of radius. In other words, instead of a 16 amma radius, it would really be a 16 and a half amma radius. So if a 16 amma radius gets you to 768, or really gets you to 803, then the 16 and a half amma radius will get you to the 803. So we'll get you to the 803, what's to the 833. Because 2500 divided by 3 is 833. So 16 and a half amma radius will get you approximately to 833. That's Marhani Leidok. So that's why it's Leidok, because Ula said it's a 16 amma radius. It's really a little bit more that would pat to you. He's saying only up to 16, don't bring Bikurim. More than 16, he was Leidok on, but really, even if it was a little bit more than 16, you also wouldn't have to bring Bikurim. Well, let's look at what that would be, the area. 16.5 times 16.5 times 3.1415. The area for that would be 855 versus what we're saying is 803. So that's why Ula was a little bit machmer. Beautiful.
How is it a chumrah?
Because Ula is saying up until a radius of 16, you don't have to give Bikurim. It's really up until a radius of 16 and a half, you don't have to be Bikurim. So he's not partnering him Bikurim up to 16 and a half. He's only partnering him Bikurim up to 16. So therefore, it's a chum. By Ula not being accurate, he's being mach. The problem with that is Tosfos asks a very important question. He asks, who said that that's a kula? Maybe it's a chumrah. So Tosfos l'chumrah loydok v'im timer for Tosfos, and I'm in the lower half of the intermediate lines. V'hanami kulu, not bringing. I mean, the fact that he's going to be mechayv you to bring bikurim, even if it's over 16, and even though technically you have up to 16 and a half. So you're thinking, oh, it's a kula. Why is it a kula? When you think it's a chumrah, why is it a chumrah? Because you have to bring bikurim. But bringing bikurim isn't a chumrah. Why? V'im timer v'hanami kulu. How do I see bikurim? You know why? Because if you bring bikurim from these pairs, the mafkalu mitruma ma'aser, you don't have to take trumas and ma'aser from the bikurim. Because I mean by ma'aser asfina. So it's there's two sides of this coin. Sure, it's a chumrah that you have to bring bikurim, but now it's a kula that you don't have to bring trumas and ma'aser. Yishleimar du ula la'ari ella b'mai de'enim mevi b'soich yud vav. He's talking that you don't bring bikurim within the 60 amos. Sometimes you would bring, and sometimes you wouldn't bring. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what Tosfos' teretz is. Let's think. I'm sorry. Well, there's no problem with Chulun Bazar because the bikurim, Chulun Bazar. So I guess he's saying up to 16, he knows for sure it's not Chulun Bazar because you don't bring. Up to 16, you don't bring. When you mean more than 16, you've altered the suffix. He says you do bring. How can you say you bring? I maybe to the Chulun Bazar here. Maybe sometimes he will bring, sometimes he wouldn't bring because it depends on the exact calculation. Depends on the exact calculation. So I guess therefore, because what Ulu's saying up to Yud Vav is 100% sure that he's not supposed to bring, that he's supposed to bring truma. And after Yudvav, it's 100% he's supposed to bring truma, because we know that you cannot bring bikurim, right? Yosy midvav, it's a suffix. So when you say l'chumer l'dak means he's telling you if it's more than Yavav, you have to bring bikurim, but maybe you have to bring truma also. No, he's not saying chlor you don't have to. So he would probably have to be machmer. So for the area that he's 100% sure about, right? There, it's duck. He knows for sure that area is potter from bikurim. The area of fuzziness where he was loy duck on that, maybe you wouldn't bring truma. Maybe you would. Maybe it's maybe what he's saying is there it would go both ways, but he's not saying clear for sure. You bring bikurim and you pot your own truma. Okay, so let's see the Gemara right. The way Rashi and the Gemara makes the cheshbon, since they don't use pi, what they do is they take a strip, and what Rashi does is you have a 32 amma square, right? So he says what you do is, since we have more square ammas to play with, you create a strip of 130 by a half amma. If you have 130 by a half amma, you can go all the way around that square of 16 by 16 and get to 16 and a half by 16 and a half. That's where the Gemara's cheshbon comes from of Pashule Palgada Amsa, because you can add a half amma all the way around. But using pi, it's so much simpler of a calculation. So this, just to review very quickly, 2,500 square ammas is a base saw. 3 trees are the right amount of concentration to plant in 2,500 square ammas, which means each tree, the accurate shear, each tree requires 833 and a third square ammas to survive. Ula, by giving a radius of 16, was saying 803 and change square ammas to survive, right? So that's why Ula was like dog, because it's not really 803, it's really, it's 804 actually. Pi is 804, it's not really 804, it's really 833. So there was an area of like dog of about 29 square ammas. Sorry, from 4 to 33 is 29 square ammas, right? So he was off by about 29 square ammas, where he said you might be chayiv in bikurim, and technically you're not chayiv in bikurim, because technically the tree still needs that place. Behind the ladok, because he was mechayiv you with bikurim. Zok the Gemara, Tashma, hakoyna ilan. If you buy an ilan, vikakoi. When you buy the ilan, you say I'm buying the land with the ilan. Maybe vikari. You're allowed to bring bikurim, and you could also say the parsha bikurim. So what do you mean you bought the land? Parsha is you bought the immediate land right around the tree. My love, koshahu. So you see clearly that even though my tree is infringing on the land all the way around it, I'm still allowed to say, I should tell you my artzucha. When it says you bought ilam v'kakoy, it means you bought 16 amas around it. Tashma. If you bought 2 trees that were in your friend's field, maybe veinekayr, because that doesn't include the land. Hashloisha, you could be medai, that if you bought 3 trees, maybe v'kayr includes the land. But my love, poshu. Thomas Tava to say it includes land 16 amas around each tree, means you bought the land in between the property, in between the trees. Dr. Marloy, means that once you buy 3 trees, you're automatically buying 16 amas all the way around. Tashma. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Karka Koshu, Chayiv B'Peah U'B'Bikurim, which is our focus, the Koshu of Prisma. Even a postage stamp size property would be Chayiv B'Bikurim. According to Lula, there's no such thing. According to Lula, it's a minimum 804 square amas. Peah, again, any karka is Chayiv B'Peah. And Koshu of Prisma, because we know that the takana of Prisma was only made on a loan that's backed up with karka. So you might ask, what's the difference? Why would they only back up a loan? Why would they only give you a solution to avoid Shemitah if it's a loan that has karka. So Rashi tells us the reason for that is because the vast majority of loans were lent out when there was a proper surety, when there was karka involved. So therefore, that was the derech. It was very unusual to lend someone money with no surety at all if there was no karka. Therefore, the Rabbanan didn't make a takana for something that was not shchiach. So that's pruzbul. And we know another feature of land is kinagav, turning on Tamid Beis, the niklan ima nechasim she'ein la machrayis. You can be kind with kinagav even if the amount of property we're talking about is a tiny little amount. So our problem is, it says you can give bikurim even with a small piece of property. According to Ula, you would need a 16 amma radius around whatever plant you're taking truma of, you're taking bikurim of. We're not talking about a tree. We're talking about a stalk of wheat. A stalk of wheat doesn't need 16 ammas. Ula only said as halacha by a tree. Dekanami, the katani, kolshu, shema mina. It says kolshu, so clearly it's not referring to a tree. Okay, Gavalti. Look to my right. Tashma. Elon. It says it by principle as well. It's talking about everything. All of these halachas apply to a piece of karka kosher, right? Karka kosher, chayiv, on all these things. Peya, bikurim, kosher of principle, and kinaga.
You're going to get entire in one hit.
No, for peya could mean a couple of chitim, but you still don't need 60 namas. But it means that there has to be to mizan for them and to mizan for if it's a loss. Tashma Elon miktase ba'aret miktase b'chutzlaret. Someone planted an Elon smack right dab on the property line. So half of it is in Eretz Yisrael and half of it is in chutzlaret. So the halacha is it's tevel v'chulun murav mizavazeh. Half of it is mechuyev in Trumas and Maishus, and half of it isn't. So this is going to be a problematic tree. Divrei Rebbe. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel no. Agadol b'chiyav, whatever is on the chutzlaret, on the Eretz Yisrael side is chayiv. Agadol b'tur, whatever is on the chutzlaret side, potter is potter. So Zok Gemara, at kan loy pli. So basically, you have to draw an imaginary line. You have to take the property line and draw that imaginary line all the way up to the top of the tree. Whatever's on one side of the tree, on the border, right? Whatever's on one side of the border will be Eretz Yisrael and will have the dinim of Trumas and Maishus. Whatever's on the other side of the border will be like chutzpah will be put. So how can I plead? Elo the Marsaver Yesh Breyer or Marsaver Ein Breyer. Everybody agrees that there's a gemishach over here, right? So the older prayer, you'll say that punkt, all the nourishment that came from Eretz Yisrael, punkt end up on one side of the border, and punkt, all the nourishment that was from chutzlaretz end up on that side of the border. So the whole machlokes is of yesh ber ein ber. But everybody agrees of a gadol b'ptur divak kol potter. Everybody agrees that all that nourishment that was pulled up from chutzlaretz is potter. The question is how you can know which fruit came from which bit of nourishment. But Klor will agree that the nourishment from chutzlaretz will be potter. The problem is, how can you say that? Because we know, according to Ula, there's a radius of 16 that everything needs. Look at Rashi. Everybody agrees that if all of the roots of the tree were only in chutzlaretz, it will be potter. Even though this tree is within 16 amas of Eretz Yisrael. But according to Ula, we would still consider it as having been nourished from Eretz Yisrael. So it's Shver Anula. Dr. Mano, Hacha b'may askinan the mafsek tunma. Avada, normally, according to Ula, it's going to be yoinik 16 amas into the property of Eretz Yisrael. But here you have a tumna. Tumna was that underground stone barrier that doesn't let anything cross. It's impenetrable. So therefore, we know for sure that everything that grew on the Chutz Laret side was not yoinik at all from Eretz Yisrael side. So according to Rebbe, why do you, since we clearly see a separation and there was absolutely no mixture in the nourishment from the right side came from Eretz Yisrael, and the nourishment from the left side came from Chutz La'aretz. Why would Rebbe say it's awesome? Because once the nourishment gets into the trunk, now they could move around. And the nourishment going up the trunk from the Eretz Yisrael side might end up in Paris that are on the Chutz La'aretz side, and vice versa. The gate is only below ground level. So you have your tree, not in the air. The nourishment as it goes up the tree will move around in the trunk. Just because it came in from a root on the left side, in the trunk it moves around. It says a lashon of avira, but I don't think that's what it means.
On one side, right?
No. We're talking about it's on both sides. We were focusing for a minute. We were focusing for a minute on the roots from the left side. Everybody agrees that the roots from the left side, the roots from the Chutz La'aretz side, are only nourishing from Chutz La'aretz. The problem was, according to Ula, even the roots from the Chutz La'aretz side will be nourishing from Eretz Yisrael. That was the kasha. The Gemara said, no. If all the roots were on one side and there was a stone fence, there would be no problem at all. But here we still have some roots in Eretz Yisrael, some in Chutz La'aretz. But the Chutz La'aretz side are not going to be impacted at all by Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because of its tummy. The only mixing occurs in the tree itself. So avira mevalvel, the air is mevalvel. But it doesn't literally mean that the air is mevalvel, because if you look at Rashi avira mevalvel, even though under the ground there's a good barrier, so it's like two separate trees. One part's only taking from Chutz La'aretz, and one part of the roots are only taking from Eretz Yisrael. So since once it's above ground, it's one trunk, it mixes inside. I mean, from reading Rashi, it sounds it's not the air that's doing it. It's just saying the part of the trunk that's not in the ground, that's above the ground, that is one unit, and there is where the nourishment will mix in the trunk. Is that what he says, or he says the air actually makes that happen? Okay, gewaltig. So now we finished.
Above the ground.
So it doesn't say the air makes it happen. It's just for the trunk that happens to be above the ground. That's where the nourishment inside mixes. It doesn't stay on one side. Do you remember when we were kids? We used to do experiments. We would take a plant and we would put it into a colored liquid, and we would see that the colored liquid got sucked up into it. So I have a cheshik to take a plant with two roots and put one root into red liquid, one into green liquid, and see what happens when they go up the trunk. Because you could technically do an experiment and see that.
That makes the color of the flowers. No?
That's right. Zok Tehillah Gemara. Here's where we're going to start seeing a little bit of a difference of opinion. Zok Gemara. You, Ula, are telling us that up to 16 amas it's yoinik, but not more. But that's not true. Because didn't we learn that you have to stay 25 amas away from a bar? We had this kasha already. Amar Abaye, Mezel Tuva Asli. Of course, the roots extend much further than just 16 amas. But they're only weakening the karka. In other words, they're only sucking up nourishment from the karka up to a radius of 16 amas. So Ula is accurate. It's only going to be yonik for 16 amas, although the roots are technically spread to a larger radius than that. Yosef of Dimi Omar, boy mi never shlokish mir b'yoichanan, ilo na samach lemetzar b'soich yud vavama, mahu, amal gazlanu, which is exactly what Ula said. The ein mavin mimenu bikur. But Kiyasa Rabin Omar b'yoichanan, Rabin had quoted Rabbi Yochanan with a completely different perspective, and he said, "Echad ilo na samach lemetzar, v'echad ilo hanoite." It's leaning over. Maybe vikare. You know why? Dr. Rashi, when Yeshua gave Klal the land, he made a t'nai with them that if your neighbor's tree is growing near yours and it's nourishing from your property, take it easy. It's going to be good. Don't freak out. Or if his tree is leaning over in your property, it'll be his. That was the deal that they made. So therefore, you could bring bikurim.
And here that he says you're not a
That's
goblin.
right. We got that wrong. Huh?
Here he says you're not a goblin, but it's still not your fruit, right?
So you have to kasha. Kasha. Okay, so I'm not a goslin because Yeshua Miratai shouldn't be makbid, but it doesn't make it yours. Tonight was damage makbid, but it's not yours, right? That was mamish bothering. So like pidel kachsai, nicht das amant, damage makbid. Don't need. So Yemen's roots are on your property. Calm down. But the master is nicht dance. When he gave everybody their property, when he separated the properties, he made a t'nai. I'm separating the properties, but only I'm makbid b'lizach.
I said down.
Okay, I hear, but I think Mut is asking a good question. So let's look at Tosfos. Let's look at Tosfos at the bottom of Chavav Amud Beis, because I have the same problem. I think it's this Tosfos. I'm going towards the Venera. I'm looking towards the end of Tosfos. Venera of Goslan, who the second to the last Tosfos on Chavav Amud Beis. So Venera, which is 3 lines up from the bottom of Tosfos, second to the last word on the line. Venera Kepir Shekudrus. Because of that, I want to learn like Rashi. The Alvagav the Mutter Lismoich, even though you could be Soimach, ein Mevian Mimenu Bikurim, the Bedin Shetavi Martzucha. So there's still a problem. Ashetavi Martzucha. What time is it? We have a little 6:40. But where are we up to? So we're already up to the Mishnah. Okay, we don't have a lot of time. So okay, so we'll just read it from there. Come on, the Amar Elon Samach maybe Vikairi Shamanas Kain Hilchin Yeshua Saretz. So this answering what is kasha. Like Amar Shamanas Kain Hinchel She Mutter Lismot. The Belav Hochi. Sorry, it's mutter anyway because of the certain halachas that Tosfos was quoting before. Which is what Chaim said. So, at first glance, it seems like it was just at night and it shouldn't be akbada. That's going to be shver because that doesn't make it me'artzacha. And for Tosfos, what Rashi means is that it actually becomes your right to do that. So that's what exactly what Chaim said. So that's exactly what you said. So it is for some, but it's unfortunate Tosfos. Okay, gewaltig. Zogt a heilige Gemara weiter. Zogt a Mishnah. We got to move fast. Elon to noita l'stei chaver. What if your tree is hanging over into your friend's field? The halach is you're going to be working along the edge of your field, and your rig is tall, so you're going to bank in the branches. It's going to impede the work that you need to do in your field. So the halach is kaitzetz malei hamardeya al gabe hamachreish. You're allowed to prune and cut off any branches that are leaning over into your property that will interfere with your operation. You can go straight up. You can draw an imaginary wall, and you can cut all the branches, no matter how high they are. You can cut them off because they have another problem. Besides the fact that the branches are impeding your work, they create so much shade, and by shading your property, it's going to diminish the growth from your property. Mishkelos means it's like a plumb line. If you want to make something perfectly straight, you take a string and you put a weight at the bottom of it. So you do that by the wall, by the granite, and straight up, anything on your side makes the shnat. Beis HaShlochin. What about a Beis HaShlochin? Now, Beis HaShlochin is something that doesn't have a lot of its own water. You have to water it. Because of that, it's actually much more sensitive, and it needs more sunlight. So Beis HaShlochin, Kala Elon Keneged HaMishkolos. You could always cut any tree, anything that grows over to your property, you can cut off. Abba Shaul says, Kol Elon Srak Keneged HaMishkolos. Any fruit, any tree that doesn't grow fruit, if it doesn't grow fruit, we're less sensitive to chopping it down. And therefore, if it's any non-fruit bearing tree hanging over into your property, you're allowed to trim it completely. So the Gemara wants to know, when Abba Shaul was commenting, what was he commenting on? Abba Shaul, was he going on the ratio? It says, Elon Shunoi to Lasada Chaverei, Kaitit Smaller Mardeya, Agabe Mechreisha. You're only allowed to cut Mother Mardeya. Kumt Abba Shaul to Zogin, but Becharuva Veshikma is connected to Mishkailis. Kumt Abba Shaul to Zogin, no, you can't cut anything you want. you could only cut if it's a non-fruit bearing tree. So is Abishol coming to say you can't cut too much, only if it's non-fruit bearing? Is that what he's talking about? Or maybe he's going on the Seifa. By base of Shlochin, it says you can cut Kala Elon, connected to Mishkailus, and the Abishol is saying not Kala Elon. I'm sorry, so I typed it wrong. If it's on the ratio, he's adding to it. He's saying if he's going on the ratio says every tree you can only cut connected Amardeya, only a Charuv and Shikma you can cut all the way to the top. Kum to Abishol says no. Any non-fruit tree you can cut all the way to the top. So Abishol is coming to increase the amount of trees that you're allowed to trim if it's not a fruit tree. But if Abishol is going on the Seifa, where by base of Shlochin we said every tree you're allowed to cut all the way up to the top, there Abishol is being machmir, and he's saying no, not every tree, only trees that don't bear fruit. So that was the shayla. What was Abishol referring to? The Abishol Areshakoi, and he's being makel, or Yasevakoi, he's being machmir. Tarjuma. The Tanya we learned base of Shlochin, Abishol Omer, Kala Elon, Keneged HaMishkolos. Why? Mipnei Shatzel Ra LeBeis HaShlochin. Because for a Beis HaShlochin, the shade is very bad. So it's Shema Mina. You see from here a Reishakai. You see that Abishol is coming to be makel and saying every tree. Because he said Shema. What did Abishol say? Kala Elon. Sorry.
Regular field or irrigated?
A Beis HaShlochin means a field that doesn't have enough rain, and therefore you have to irrigate it. They need more sunlight. Right. And on a Beis HaShlochin, it would be a chomer. If he's addressing a Beis HaShlochin, he's being machmir because he's limiting it to non-fruit bearing trees. But if he's saying it by a regular tree, he's being makel because he's saying not only a charuv and a shikma, any tree except for any tree that's not a fruit tree. Since he said kol ha'ilon, it's a raya that he's coming to be makel, right?
So that would be only tying it to a irrigated field.
I'm sorry. That's correct. I was jumping ahead in the Gemara. That's right. So Vivaldi says by a Beis HaShlochin it's kol ha'ilon connected to Mishkolos. So you see clear he's going on the Seifa and he's saying that not only I'm sorry. No, Shemamina Reishika. You see going on the Reisha, forget it. Abishol says kol ha'ilon connected to Mishkolos. Every type of tree, even an Elon Srak, even a tree without fruit, you can cut Keneged Mishkolos in a Beis HaShlochin. So you see Zikr not trying to be Memayit in the Beis HaShlochin. So he must be referring to the first case where it's not a Beis HaShlochin, and there he's being makel and he's saying every non-fruit bearing tree you can also cut just like you can cut a charuv and a shikva. Shemamina Reishika. Shemamina. This is what I got confused with. From the Mishnah Mineu Bay, you can see what Abishol meant with his comments. The Katani kol Elon Tzrak. So if Abishol is using the word kol Elon Tzrak, he's coming to be makel and add, not remove. If Abishol was trying to say that in the Beis HaShlochin it's only an Elon Tzrak, Abishol should have said Abishol Omer Elon Tzrak, Davka Elon Tzrak. Kol shows that he's trying to add. The Ketani Kol Elon Tzrak. Yeah, but Mishlam Reishakai, Hanid can be Kol. Not only a sycamore, not only a charuv, but any tree you'll cut if it doesn't have fruit. Now the Amrit Aseifakai, then he's saying you can't cut every tree in the Beis HaShlochin. You can only cut a Elon Tzrak. So Elon Tzrak Miboyle, he shouldn't have used the word Kol. Allah Shemina, Areishakai Shmamina. Elon Shenoit L'Shusarab. An Elon that's leaning over to Shusarab. Koitet, you cut it. Kadeshe Gomel Over Veroishkai. You have to cut it so that even if a camel rider is riding behind the camel, let's say he's 15 feet in there, any branch that's below 15 feet in there, you're allowed to trim. I don't know what's taller. The Gemara is going to declare what's taller. Forget to allow passerbys to go. We're concerned that if there'll be a piece of mace on the floor, then there'll be a canopy coming from next door, it's going to be matam of the public because it's going to be under an oil. It's going to spread the tumah. Therefore, you can always cut any branch that sticks over from a Rishus HaYochid into a Rishus HaRabba to protect the people from tumah. Think about it over here. By trimming trees only to the point where a guy could get underneath it, that's setting us up for an ongoing issue because it's going to grow back. So who said you don't have to worry about the future? You only deal with the current problem at hand. Amar Shlokish the Machloikis Shnuyus the Machloikis. Rebbe Lezer he would be going to Rebbe Eliezer. It's not to be learned. Ein Oishin Chalal Tachas Rishus Harabim. You're not allowed to build a underground cavity under Rishus Harabim. So imagine you're in Rishus HaYachid, you want more space, so you dig a bar in your property, and then you dig under, you tunnel under Rishus Harabim to get yourself some extra space. You're not allowed to do that. Boyros, Sheikh and the Mars, whatever they are, you're not allowed to do them. Rebbe Eliezer Matir Bichdei Shetehei Agala Maleches Utunavon. As long as you make sure that the road above your hole is strong enough to carry a full 50-foot trailer fully loaded, so then it doesn't impact your Rishus Harabim. Even though over time it will weaken and collapse. So you see very clearly that Rebbe Eliezer holds that you could do it now, even though it's going to deteriorate later, while the Chum say you can never do it ever because we're worried about the future. So our mission that says you don't just chop the tree down, rather you just trim it, hold like Rebbe Eliezer, you deal with the current problem at hand. Rabbi Yechanan Marfil Temer Rabbanan Hasam Zimnin the Mifchas for Lavadai. There it's more dangerous. There's a greater concern that the Chachamim have because you don't notice deterioration, and therefore it could one day suddenly collapse. That's why the Rabbanan are more marked. But over here they might agree. As a branch grows, it's going to be noticed right away that it's growing, and therefore we can deal with it as it happens. Whose shear requires more clearance? What's taller? A loaded gummel with packages or a loaded gummel with a person on it? The shear derabanan. It must be that the shear derabanan is nafish, meaning gummel v'roichbay, is taller than gummel with packages. You saw the diadoch shear Rabbi Yehuda nafish. If the shear of Rabbi Yehuda is nafish, packages, and the rabbanan say you don't have to clear up so much space. So let's say packages is 20 feet and the person is 15 feet. If that's the case, so then what are you going to do? Rabbanan b'shir Rabbi Yehuda hechiyati. How if I only have to clear 15 feet of height because the rabbanan say only for a person, and someone's coming with packages, he's gonna hit the top of the bridge. It's gonna be a big problem. So in fact, the more and the other way you have the same problem. But my shmir rabban nafish, you can say the rabban shears nafish, then Rabbi Yehuda b'shir rabban ma'ovid. So what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do if he holds that you only have to have 10 feet for packages? What if I'm a rider? I'm going to bump my head. That's more no. Actually, the gachin v'chalav to say if you're a rider, you see a low bridge, you'll duck, but your package won't duck. Therefore, it's mistaber to say that the rabbanon shear of Gamal V'Reichba is higher than the shear of packages. Rab Shimon Omer, Kala Elon Keneged HaMeshkaylich B'Te'atum, Tana Mipnei Oyel Atum. The concern is that if there will be Tumah on the floor, it would make an oil, and therefore anybody walking under these trees would become Tumah. Rab Shita, isn't that what the Mishnah says? Zok Gemara, no, you need the Brisa to clarify it's oil Tumah. Because Imam Asnis and Havamina, maybe we would be worried that a raven would put something on the tree, right? And you put it on the tree. No, you wouldn't have cut that off. The fakert, the shadi, and then the sagi, the chalchula ba'alma. You'd only have to lighten it up. Why would you only have to lighten it up? The Rashi, the shadi asum, a raven will drop a piece of tumah on top of one of the branches. With Shanof of Rabbim, since there's a big canopy and there's many branches, the tumah will remain there. It'll never fall down. When the other and people are walking underneath it, and meaning it's on top of the oil, so you're not walking in an oil, but tumah b'kas v'las. But someone's going to end up walking or riding right underneath it, right? And it's going to stay there forever. If that's the only thing you'd be concerned about, we would only have to lighten up, cut off some of the branches, not all. Just it would be enough if we cut off some of the branches. I guess if there's more air, it'll eventually fall off. I think that's what it means. Even one branch will be mazik the rabbim because it could potentially be in the oil. What does he say for Duma Maisi or Tuma Bishadi Yosam, and therefore Sagi B'Chol Balma? I thought that would make it fall off.
You know, when you thin it out, like the balls get stuck when it's heavy.
But when you thin it out, it'll fall off of it. That's what I thought. Okay. So Baruch Hashem, we finished the second parak of Basra. Neder Hadin Lachayachbar. Neder Hadin Lachayachbar. Neder Hadin Lachayachbar. Magen Cheskel Basra. Hashem. That's right.